we can get started. Hopefully everybody's in here. I'm really excited to share with you guys today. So this is something that I'm really passionate about, and really appreciate Nextech reaching out to me and giving me this opportunity to share with you guys. Hope everybody is able to get at least something out of it. What we're talking about today is how to start coding online fast. So let's start out with who I am. My name, as you can see on this slide here, is David Richardson. I am a software engineer. I work for Kinsey Academy. Specifically, I work on the research and development team. What we do is build all sorts of tools for students and staff at Kinsey Academy to use. My title right now is software engineer. I've kind of recently been promoted. So I actually went to school at Kinsey Academy. When I graduated, I was part-time as an apprentice. I became a junior developer, and not too long ago, I moved up to software engineer. So I'm kind of young in my career, but I think that's what's most important about me today, about who I am, is I'm young and early in my career, and I feel like I can really relate to people in high school who are up against this challenge of leaving school and getting a job and starting a career. So I actually, to show how young I am, I just turned 20 not too long ago, and I actually graduated high school 2 years ago in 2019. So got right out of high school and right into industry, and have had a really good experience. We can talk about how I kickstarted my career later on at the end. Got a little segment there, but anyway, I feel like that helps me closely relate to the high school demographic, and I have a lot of knowledge that I am really passionate about sharing with high schoolers who are passionate about programming. So let's get started. In programming, when I remember learning programming, I remember I came up against one really big problem, and that was, how do I learn all the code? Where do I get to explore and play with code without all of the setup and the hassle? And I remember, I would be so passionate about a new project, or I would have some big idea that I wanted to create, but I would get stopped before I ever started working on code while I was just trying to install all the tools and get everything ready on my computer, right? This problem actually has a name, and it's called the development environment. So you can see this definition here, the development environment is a set of processes and programming tools used to create a program or software product. But that doesn't have to mean anything to you. What's important for us today is to think about the development environment as everything that you use to code. So you want to start coding, you want to learn how to code. The development environment is all the tools that you're going to use. And historically, typically, a development environment has to exist on your computer. You have to use programs on your computer to code, and use programs on your computer to run that code. But what I'm hoping to encourage you guys with today, and maybe inspire some of you with, is now there is a much easier way to start playing with code. You don't have to install any tools on your computer. You don't have to fuss with any setup that could go wrong and cause errors. You can just code online. So the online quick and easy development environment, thanks to the tools that I will introduce you guys to today, you can now start programming online without having to do any sort of crazy setup, without having to focus on solving errors and setting up your computer. You can just get right in and explore the code. I think it really is helpful for those of you who may be curious about code but not have a lot of experience and want to just get in and play around. So the first question that I have for you guys today, and I actually want to see some answers in the chat, is have you wanted to explore code but been held back by the development environment? I want to see you chat, I want to explore code. And then also, if you have already started exploring some code, if you've started creating some things on your own, either online or on your computer, I want to see people say that they have started to explore code. But I've got the chat pulled up here, and really just looking for some input, looking to see all right, sweet, they're rolling in. Lots of people saying they've already started to explore code. Yeah, David's saying he wants to explore code yet, but hasn't had the time or confidence. Hopefully this really helps you out with that. A couple more answers like that. Yeah. Okay, really encouraged seeing lots of people say they already have started working with code. That's really awesome. Issy says they want to explore, but just not sure where to start. Totally fair. These tools may be for you today. That's awesome. Never know where to start, never know how to start. That's awesome. Well, hopefully what I share with you today can really be helpful for that situation. You want to explore code, you just don't have a good PC. That's another really good example of a use case for the online code environment. I know a lot of high schools who started moving to using iPads or Chromebooks instead of traditional laptops. That can be awesome. It's great for the school, but it can be really challenging for a student who's passionate about programming. I remember when my school started to move that direction, I actually was forced to buy my own laptop because I wanted to keep working on code and couldn't do it on my school device anymore. But now you don't have to do that with the online development environments. You can have a great way to explore code on some of those non-traditional devices like an iPad or a Chromebook. So let's keep on moving here. The two tools that we're going to be covering today work with Python and React. So with Python, I already saw some of you guys in the chat mention Replit. Replit is an awesome tool. And the other one is React and Code Sandbox. So the first one I want to look at today with you guys is Python. And to start off with, what is Python? You can see this definition here. Python is an interpreted high-level general purpose programming language that is kind of like a alphabet soup. That's a lot of words that probably you don't quite understand, but that's okay. You don't have to for our purposes today. An interpreted programming language is, it just means that another program reads and understands the Python code and runs it on your computer. And a high-level programming language is kind of along those lines. So Python is not like writing machine code. If binary and machine code instructions are down here, Python is like up here. Kind of up above it. So it's simplified, it's easier to understand and read. You're not messing with like system memory trying to write Python code. It's really easy for anybody to jump in and get started. And lastly, general purpose. I don't know if some of you are at home or in school, but I could say pretty confidently that wherever you are, somewhere in that building, a device is running Python. Python is used for everything. People use it for machine learning and AI, all the way up to like running web servers and everything in between. So what that means for you guys is, if you're able to learn Python now, if you can really get a handle on it, you are kickstarting your career because Python is just used in everything and it's not going away anytime soon. What can you use Python for now? The big thing that Python can be used for and can be really fun for in high school is solving math problems. So that doesn't sound big, right? I hyped it up. Solving math problems sounds kind of lame. But from my experience, when I was going through high school and had a lot of passion for programming, I did not do well in my math classes. And one thing that really helped me was to take those concepts that I was struggling with, like Pythagorean Theorem, algebraic equations, something like that. If I had something I was really struggling with, and make a program in Python or whatever it is I was working on to solve for that thing or whatever. But the process of programming around this concept I couldn't understand, by the end of it, I would have a much better grasp on what I was struggling with. So kind of a side note, if you're a person who is passionate about programming, wants to learn programming, or already is programming, and you're struggling in some of your classes like math, I encourage you to consider taking some of those concepts that you're not quite able to grasp and trying to program something around them. I'm hoping that like me, you will be able to better grasp that concept that you're missing by using code as a tool to understand it. The other thing that you could use Python for is like text-based games. So Oregon Trail, kind of an old game, kind of a classic. You can do stuff like that. None of this sounds really fun, but when you really get into the code and you've made something, by the end you have a product, it's really rewarding. So let's go ahead and just get hands-on with the first tool that we want to look at. And I'm going to take us over to Replit. So I already had this open. I can see that the screen sharing is working. So cool, good to go. So this is Replit, everybody. I am already logged in. I would encourage you, if you wanted to use this tool, replit.com, that you also would log in and create an account. You can use Replit without an account, but what's really cool if you do create an account is any what they call REPL or any sandbox that you make, you can always come back to. So your code doesn't get lost. Let's go ahead and create a REPL. And we want to use Python. As you can see, they've got lots and lots and lots of tools. If you're already more comfortable with something else and are looking for a way to play around with that language, there's tons of options here, but we're going to go with Python today and create the REPL. Cool. So here it is, and I want to reiterate. You know, my intent today is not to teach you how to program. So if you don't have any programming experience, probably the first place to start is another tool that I've shared with Nextech, another resource called codecademy.com. They have a great program to kind of get a general knowledge base of Python going. But if you have some, like, just very minimal code experience, but you're just looking for a place to play around with code without having to install the tools, this is what's for you. So you can see I can just go ahead and do some math here. If we say 2 equals 2, 3 equals 3, and we'll just print 2 plus 3. And oh, missed my R there. There we go. We run this, boom, it prints 5, right? So this is simple Python code, right? So again, my intent is not to teach you Python, but this is a really cool tool that you can use to play around with if you have some Python knowledge but don't want to install new tools. You can make some really cool things this way. The other thing that I really love about online code environments or online development environments is that REPLs are public. Any REPL that you make is public. It can be found on Google. The flip side of that coin is any REPL that other people make is public. It can be found on Google. So like I mentioned earlier, Pythagorean Theorem, maybe you are trying to create a Python program to solve a Pythagorean Theorem so you can understand that concept a little better, but you're struggling or you don't know where to start. Simply Google Pythagorean Theorem, Python Replit, and literally the first 2 results are a Pythagorean Theorem calculator with Replit. So tons and tons and tons of examples that people have already made, and you can get in here and start exploring this code. So I've already opened this one. We'll just go check it out. And you can see this is Replit. This is the tool that we were just in earlier. And you can show all the files here and actually view how they were able to create this tool. So this is a great way to learn to program. And in fact, in my day-to-day job, if I am faced with something that I don't know, the way that I learn best is looking for examples of other people that, looking for examples that other people have created so I can learn from their code. So if you needed to know like how to get input from Python, you can see this input right here. You can see how they've created variables and how they're doing math, this kind of thing. So it can be really fun to look up a program on REPL, look up a challenge that you're facing, and then go through the code and kind of see how they accomplished it. We can just go ahead and run this so I can show you guys. And one thing that I found is you got to click this little clear and then it will work. But so enter leg 1, 30, enter leg 2, 20. And it gives you the hypotenuse, right? Simple stuff, but this is Python code running in a browser without installing any tools. And to me, that's really exciting because someone who wants to learn doesn't have to fuss with all the setup. They can right now leave the session and go start working in Python without any setup at all. So we can just do the inverse of this really quick. If we just say 20 and 36.05, boom, right? So everything is working. You can see they've built a pretty slick program here, and you can explore it and see how it works. So Replit is an awesome tool. I encourage you guys, if you're interested in Python or C or any of the other languages that we saw earlier, check it out, get to programming online, and see if you like it before you fuss with all the setup, or if you have a device where you can't set anything up, Man, this is such a great, such a great answer to that problem. So let's get back into it and talk about the second tool that I wanted to cover today, and that is for React. So React.js, probably not very many people have heard of that. It's awesome if you have. React, if you look up the definition, is a free and open source front-end JavaScript library for building user interfaces based on UI components. Again, sounds like that probably is a lot of alphabet soup. Don't have to necessarily understand what all of that means, but put simply, React is a really fun way to take HTML and CSS skills and add some functionality. So I know if you guys have any programming classes, you probably started with HTML and CSS, making really simple websites. And React is a really fun, easy way to take that HTML knowledge and build on it to make web apps. So it also is the industry standard. I use React every day in my job. I actually am a React developer more than anything. I'm a full stack developer, so I work on some other things, but React is what I use 24/7. So again, just like Python, if you get into these tools, if you get into Code Sandbox and start learning React now, you are going to be setting yourself up really well for the future. So got another question for you guys. I want to see some input in the chat. Have you used HTML and CSS to make a website? And have you added JavaScript to that HTML and CSS website, whether it's like vanilla JavaScript or maybe it's jQuery? Bailey, I see you said unfortunately. I certainly can relate to that. It can be very frustrating. Yeah, so yeah, we've used HTML, but not with JavaScript. Great. No. Okay. Don't think we've used HTML. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Cool. Some good answers here. All right. So hopefully those of you who have used HTML and CSS, maybe JavaScript is kind of the next step for you guys. Those of you who have used HTML and CSS with jQuery, JavaScript can be a really easy progression for you guys. Wes says, just started to learn CSS with Mr. Belch. Shout out to my computer science teacher, Mr. Belch. He's the GOAT. Okay, so what can you guys make with React? Simple websites. If you have a website already existing and you want to add some buttons, add some functionality to it, you can just take that code, put it in a React editor, and get to working on adding functionality right away. Another fun project is you're just kind of learning React. It's just a simple addition subtraction app. So you kind of have a number, you've got an addition subtraction button, you can just see how the numbers change, right? A calculator app, a tic-tac-toe game. React is really versatile and can be a really awesome tool. But again, just like Python, React can be really hard to set up on your computer sometimes. In theory, it's easy, but if everything doesn't go the way they tell you to, it can be difficult to find support. So an online tool is the perfect solution. And let's hop right into our other example of Code Sandbox. So I actually already had this open over here. This is Code Sandbox. You'll recognize it looks pretty similar to Replit that we were just looking at, but it's a little bit different. Replit works really well for text-based programming, and Code Sandbox works really well for web-based programming. You actually can even do just HTML and CSS in REPL. It's a really easy way to do some playing around with different CSS tricks. And if you want to get more comfortable with the Code Sandbox environment without learning React, you can just hop into Code Sandbox and work on HTML and CSS for a little bit. So we can just quickly see how you can create a React project. And another fun thing about Code Sandbox is just like Replit, you can Google, let's say we wanted to do tic-tac-toe, React, Code Sandbox. Boom, the very first search result is a Code Sandbox for React. We can hop right in here, and this is a fully interactive tic-tac-toe game if it ever loads. If it ever loads. Sweet. Okay, so we can see, start playing, click around, right? XOXO. So boom, I've won. And again, Code Sandbox, you pull up the tic-tac-toe game, you've got all the files right here. And this can be really fun to kind of play around with, break some things, and start to learn the program. So moving on, the last thing I want to cover really quickly is the disadvantages of an online code environment. Sometimes when you're working with an online code environment, you'll notice that you have a little bit less control over things, some limited tooling. For example, developers really like to work on like text editors and like really get into how efficient can they make things be. And some of these online code environments, they're a little simpler, but it can just be a really easy, fun way to get in and start playing with code without having to set anything up. The last thing that I want to talk to you guys about really quickly, along the topic of knowing all of your options for online coding, is Kinsey Academy. So Kinsey Academy, we talked about earlier. I was going to mention how I kind of kickstarted my career. Kinsey Academy can be an alternative to college, or it can go right along with it. But it's a really easy way to get hands-on industry experience and get out there in the industry quickly. So if you are considering software engineering as a career and looking at your post high school education options, I encourage you to just go to the Kinsey Academy website, check us out, and feel free to reach out with any questions. So that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully you were able to learn something about the online code environment. Hopefully this is something that's useful for you. And I am going to start filtering through the Q&A tab right now and see what kind of questions you have for us. So what kind of programs have image creation and animation with code? So actually, Python can be a really fun one to learn. Python has some libraries to work on making games or animations, but I don't know of anywhere you can do like animation with Python online. So maybe use some of these tools to get a good handle of Python and the syntax, and then try to download some tools to do animation with Python. That would be a good step. Or JavaScript is another really fun, easy one to do some like image creation and animation with the JavaScript canvas. So some things for you to Google there. Let me start from the bottom. What coding languages do I know? Well, so what I work with every day are the two examples that I gave you guys, Python and JavaScript, and specifically I work with JavaScript and React. Another programming language that I know is called Swift. Swift is Apple's like proprietary language to make iPhone apps. It can be really fun and really rewarding to make an entire app in Swift. You load it on your phone, you walk around and show all your friends, like, look how cool this thing is. So that was really fun. I had a good time learning Swift. I didn't end up going that direction for my career, but maybe down the road I switched over to iOS development. I've always thought about it. What is the best website to learn coding languages? So these tools like Replit and Code Sandbox, maybe they look a little too challenging for you. You don't have that base knowledge yet. I saw in the chat earlier someone mentioned freecodecamp.org. That is a great resource to start learning. And the other one is Code Academy. I think it is codeacademy.com. Yes, codeacademy.com. They have a really great course for Python. So I shared some of these links with Erica. Hopefully she can just pop them in the chat. Code Academy and freecodecamp.org. They're great resources to learn. Get caught up in the questions. What IDE do you personally use or recommend? Any specific extensions you swear by? So I'm assuming when you mention IDE that you're talking about Python. And when I was first learning Python, I would use just idle. They're like program that you can download from python.org or whatever. And then now what I do day to day if I'm working on Python is I just have Python installed on my computer, and I'll use terminal. Code extensions that I swear by, I think probably what you're asking about is for VS Code, and I do use VS Code There's one that's called Code Spell Check. That's pretty cool. Nothing too crazy though. I really haven't gotten an opportunity yet to geek out about adding lots of extensions. I have had to move like to several laptops, so haven't really got too settled in on one set of extensions that works the best for me. I try not to focus on it too much and just get to coding. Is Python used in game development? David asks. Yes, it is. It's not very common. Probably the most common for game development would be like C++ or C#, something like that. But Python is used in some game development and can be a really good foundation for the syntax and learning to program in those other languages. A lot of that knowledge carries over. What programming languages are most commonly used for robotics and other machines? I would say most commonly is Python. Again, like we talked about, Python being really versatile. Lots of robotics. I did some stuff when I was in high school with a little Raspberry Pi and made an RC car drive itself and that sort of thing. All of that Python can do perfectly. The other thing I would say, like game development, is some sort of C people use sometimes, like C++. I've seen used for like robotics programming, but Python is really a great way to go if that's what you're interested in. What types of programming are often used in character development specifically for video games? That's a great question, and I'm not sure. I am not too vested in the video game side of things. I do more web, but if I had to guess, like other types of video game programming, it's going to be maybe some sort of C, like C++ or C#. That's probably what most games are built on nowadays, to my knowledge. Okay, so this person asks, are Python and React free to download if we ever decide to take the next step? Absolutely, yes. So what I just certainly love about software engineering community is there's like, you could literally go anywhere and everywhere you want on free tools. So sometimes it takes a while to find, but software engineering community is really good about being open source, being completely open, and everybody kind of working together to build one knowledge base. So all these tools like React, specifically React is kind of built on something called Node, a Node package manager, Python. All of those tools are completely free to download and install on your computer. It can be a little challenging to get them installed, especially if you don't own your computer. But yes, all of it is completely free. What kind of projects have I or anyone I know made? Okay, so I'm just kind of trying to keep a good eye on time here, but I'll get to that question and just a few others left. What kind of projects have I or anyone I know made? Well, I made a really cool finance app when I was working on building up my portfolio. So you kind of can track like how much you spend and how much you make, and actually see all of that data on graphs, because I was getting kind of frustrated with a lot of those finance apps. It would take a lot of setup to really get it dialed in. But that one I didn't release. Maybe you're talking about what have I released? I don't know. Lots of websites for Kinsey Academy. Pretty much, if you join Kinsey Academy, any website you'll use for them, I've had my hand in. So lots of fun with that. And this last one right here. Why did you decide to go straight into the workplace versus college? We'll land on this question. And really, to me, the difference maker, and I've had a few high school students ask me if Kinsey Academy and something like doing a boot camp and going right into the workforce is right for them. And the question I think you have to ask yourself is, do you know that programming and software engineering is what you want to do with your life, and specifically web development? And for me, the answer was yes. I was dead set on web development. I knew that was the right path for me. And was really passionate about it. And if that's the case, something like Kinsey Academy or a coding bootcamp makes perfect sense, because it was a year of my life and I left with really great relevant experience. And hiring managers at companies know that about bootcamps. They know that what you're leaving with is the right level of experience. Now, If you aren't dead set on programming, maybe you want to explore some other things in a computer science field, that may be where college is a better bet for you. You kind of have to think about that and understand what you want out of life. And I'm always open. My email and handle is right here to answer any questions about that, or you can go to the Kinsey County website, and lots of people are available to talk to you about if it's the right option. And I think we are out of time. Erica, are we anything else we need to do here?
You have 5 more minutes if there's any other questions, actually.
Oh, I have 5 more minutes. Oh, sweet.
Yeah, you have 5 more minutes. And then while I'm on the screen, I might as well just say, after David finishes up, again, thanks, David, for joining us. You guys are breaking for lunch. Lunch is from 12:15 to 1 o'clock Eastern. And then we will see you back for breakout session number 5 at 1 p.m. Eastern. So I'm going to toss it back over to David to finish up and ask a couple more questions, but I just want to let you know where y'all are headed after this. So yeah, thanks, David.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, great. Questions are still rolling in. This is awesome. If you are thinking about doing animations for games, what is the amount of code that you should know in order to be the most effective? So if you're thinking about animations for games, like I have mentioned a couple times, so a really big program, at least to my knowledge, to make games is called Unity. And to my knowledge, what you can do in Unity is program in Python, or what most people will do is, gosh, I really believe it's C++. It's something along the lines of C++. So what I would say right now is, if you are really interested in game development and you don't have any programming experience at all, Python is a great language to invest yourself in, because it's really easy to learn. The parts, the syntax of Python that you're going to learn can be carried over to pretty much any other language. I started learning loosely. I kind of started with Python, and that foundation I've taken to every other language with me. And then from there, if you are interested in game development, you can make some really cool things with Python based on that knowledge that you've built. I think at some point along that road, you'll find that you've outgrown Python a little bit and want to move to something more towards C++. But by that time, you'll have some really great foundation in Python. So that's probably a pretty good way to go. Let's see. How much can you sell a website or app for? Well, that's a really good question. Monetization is what that's called. And monetization is kind of like the big question for the industry, right? So everybody who wants to be an indie developer, whether that's an indie game developer or indie app developer, something like that, that's the big concern, right? And it really depends on the idea, right? So can you find a unique idea? Can you find a unique technology, something to make this idea that maybe someone else has done, maybe make it more efficient? The more unique or the more special your project is, the more you'll be willing to find a buyer for it. But what I've been thinking about, I've got some apps on my mind that I want to make over winter. And really, I would like to create an app and own it. I don't want to sell one of my projects, but what the other option you can do for monetization is ads. So there are some really awesome ways to put some ads on your website or your app that aren't intrusive, but help you get some income that way. And also, if you're making apps for like the Apple or Android App Store, when that was first really popular, it would be pretty common to pay 99 cents here or there for an app, and developers would make a lot of money that way. Nowadays, it's a little bit less common to pay for apps for your phone. Now that I think about it, don't know if I have a single app on my phone that I've paid for, but that is still an option for some people. So I know what a lot of indie developers do is they'll create a website or an app with ads, and then sell a version that costs a little bit that's ad-free. Lots of questions about how much money I've made from programming, and I see one about salary. So what I can tell you is, right out of a boot camp, a number that Kinsey Academy likes to throw around, at least when I was first looking, is It's really pretty typical for a software engineer out of a boot camp to be making anywhere between 45,000 to 55,000 salary, you know, with a really sweet salary position with benefits, and all of that sort of thing. Once you know how to program, and that's for a junior. That's for somebody who's coming out of something like an academy or college trying to prove themselves. So only goes up from there. And I've certainly been fortunate with the opportunities that have been given to me. Once I was able to use code and use these tools to their full potential. Okay, here's 35 minutes. So last question: how similar are different coding programs? They honestly are all the same. So the big ones I've talked about today: JavaScript, Python, C. You learn one of them, and then maybe it takes you an X amount of time to learn something. Cut it in half. Once you are able to conquer that, you can move on to other languages really easily. So I've gone a little bit over. That's all the time we have for today. Hope everybody learned something today, and is walking away with some great knowledge.